In this video, we're going to show you how to install the lower ball joint on your Kia Sorento located in the front control arms. Using a 21mm socket, go ahead and loosen and remove your lug nuts. Go ahead and grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. There's going to be a couple things we want to do here in order to remove our lower ball joint. Number one, there is a C-clip on the bottom here. We need to tap out, so I'm going to use a steel punch. And you're going to go ahead and locate the notch in there. Like mine is facing forward, yours might be offset somewhere else. But what we really want to do is use your punch, and we want to tap this. Now, as we were tapping our C-clip here, it started to walk its way around. It was just kind of spinning around and not popping off. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my screwdriver and just kind of open this up. You can see that that C-clip is starting to come out, and that's exactly what we want. So once you get that to come out, get underneath it with that screwdriver and work this around. And that's what we want to do. We want to basically get that C-clip disengaged there. So what we're doing is basically just working that C-clip up and off. There it is. It is now released. It's no longer locking or holding that ball joint to the lower control arm. Next thing we want to do is go ahead, loosen and remove this nut off of the pinch bolt. I'm going to go ahead and use our 17mm deep socket to go ahead and remove this. And I want to go ahead and tap that through. Now our bolt seems to be stuck in there a little bit. Now what I want you to pay attention to is, though I was striking the end of this here, it's a tapered end. It does not affect the threads on this bolt. So soak this with some rust penetrant. We'll let that sit for a little bit. Now for any reason, if that doesn't work, we can go ahead and try a little bit of heat on this as well. The other thing we could try doing is going over to the other side, and we're gonna put a 17mm socket or wrench on the other side and try and spin that bolt and break that free. I'm going to go ahead and grab my wheel and rotate this so I have access to the back side. There's that bolt. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw on a couple lug nuts here. And all of these are here to do, just like these two screws, is to support the brake rotor. We're going to go ahead and compress our suspension a little bit by putting a jack underneath our brake rotor here and raising this up. And then we're going to go ahead and separate that lower ball joint and control arm from the knuckle itself. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use a securing strap. I'm going to come across between some studs on the front here, and I'm going to anchor this to the chassis. Now I have these anchored into a couple holes in the cross member or in the engine cradle itself. You want to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the control arm coming down. Now the reason why we're doing this here is that once we separate this here and we have this jacked up, it's going to naturally want to pull out, and it's going to want to pull on the CV axle. We don't want that to happen. It's okay if it pulls a little bit, but we don't want this to pry out and separate that unit inside there. So we're simply just going to apply a slight amount of pressure to it. It doesn't have to be super tight just to hold it in place. Next, we're going to go ahead and raise up our suspension or compress it with our jack. I'm going to slowly raise this up, compressing our suspension. Now, our ball joint should technically pull out of our knuckle right here because the pinch bolt has been released. So I'm going to go ahead and strike this with the hammer to see if we can get that to come out. Now our ball joint is stuck in our knuckle. We're going to go ahead and give this a few blips with the air hammer. Now if you're trying to separate this and that ball joint is stuck in here, you can clearly see I used the air hammer on the knuckle to try and pry this up. We have the pressure compressing our suspension up. This should pop up and out. and we even tried using the air hammer on the control arm. However, we want to be careful because we don't want to damage the port or the opening around the control arm where the new ball joint is going to go into, because, well, we don't want it to be loose. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to loosen our strap a little bit. We're going to bring down our jack, and then we're going to rotate our wheel outward. That's going to open up the split over here on the end where our pinch bolt goes. And we're going to go ahead and try and pry that open a little bit to try and release some of that pressure, spray some rust penetrant inside there, and hopefully that will soak in and allow us to separate this. And then we'll go ahead and pop that strap off. Now that we have our strap loosened, we're going to go ahead and crank this out. Now with this cranked out, we're going to have access to the split on the back side, where we're going to be able to put something in here and tap this in to open that up. That should allow this ball joint to pop out. But we are going to tap something in there, and then we're going to spray it with some rust penetrant and let it soak for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and drop the strap down, get it out of the way. Now you can use a chisel. I'm going to use a shorter screwdriver here. You want to make sure it's going to be enough to open this up. And actually a screwdriver probably won't be sufficient because it goes in too far. It's not going to go in far enough to open this up. You can use something a little bit more bold. Now me tapping this here with this open up, the ball joint is starting to separate. Now this is starting to pull out. Now is the time that you want to go ahead and secure this. Put that back in place and just put some pressure on that to keep that from pulling out on that axle. Now continue to tap on this here until this ball joint separates. Now at this point here, our ball joint is coming down. We're now going to go ahead and put our jack underneath our brake rotor here and raise up the suspension so that this can release the rest of the way. So now we have this jacked up. Let's continue to knock this down. There we go. Now we have our ball joint separated. Now with this separated here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove that boot and that C-clip here. Now we have our ball joint tool here ready to go ahead and press this down and out of our control arm. Now this is one of 3 different ways that you can go ahead and tackle this job. This is going to be one of them here. The second one is to simply go ahead and unbolt the whole control arm. There's only 2 bolts. There's one up front here, and then there's one in the back, and this control arm can wiggle out, and you can take this ball joint over to a bench vise or something and work that ball joint out, and then just install the control arm. The third option is to go ahead, loosen and remove the axle nut. You won't have to jack this up, but you're going to loosen and remove the axle nut. You're going to take this whole piece of suspension with the brakes and the strut and just kind of pull it back using your strap out of the way, and that'll give you better access to this, but we chose it to do it this way. That's it, our ball joint popped out. There it is right there. I'm going to go ahead and spray this down. I want to clean up where the new ball joint is going to go. Now if it's rusty in here, you can go ahead and take some 400 grit sandpaper and just run around the ridge itself just to clean it up. You don't want to grind out any metal because that ball joint is a press fit, and then we're going to put a C-clip on the top itself to lock that into place. You're going to take your new ball joint and we're going to pull the boot off. If you want to, you can pack a little more grease inside here, but then we're going to press this in, and then we're going to put our boot on the top. So let's go ahead and get that going. Now at this point here, we've fed our ball joint up into the control arm, and we have our ball joint press here ready to go. And we're just going to go ahead and crank this up and in. And all we need to do is make sure that that ball joint flange is seated all the way up and in. Make sure that's fully seated, then we can release everything here. Our next step is to go ahead and install our replacement snap ring here. Now this was the C-clip that we had popped out earlier, and if you clean this up, you could probably reuse this one here. But we're gonna go ahead and use the one supplied with the ball joint. In order to use this here, you are gonna need a pair of snap ring pliers to go ahead and put in here and open this up to fit on there. I'm gonna go ahead and pull down this arm, drop this over, and there's a groove right on the top there that this needs to fit into. I'm gonna use my snap ring pliers. Here we go. And open that up and press this down. There it is. You can run your finger all the way around there and confirm that that is locked into place. And ours is. Now we did pre-grease that. You can grease it now if you want, add to it or leave it as is. It does come pre-greased from the factory. Take your boot, slide that down and over. Go ahead and press that down and on. Now I just want to go ahead and line that up. Our ball joint itself has to get tilted inward at an angle to fit up in there. You can use whatever you have. I'm going to simply use the handle to my hammer here and just kind of give this a little bump. Maybe go just a little bit more here. I'm going to use my dead blow hammer to go ahead and tap this up. Let's go ahead and lower this down. Now that we have the ball joint starting to go in, lower down our jack. You can see that starting to go up inside. And our boot will actually press down into place again once we get this pressed up and secured. Continue to lower this down. There it is. Go ahead and pull our jack out. Now at this point, you can go ahead and pull out our chisel here or whatever you decided to use. We're gonna go ahead and take our bolt, our pinch bolt. We're gonna go ahead and run this through our wire wheel machine and clean this up. We can remove our securing strap here. Now the next thing we need to do is put our bolt through. Now the purpose of a pinch bolt is that the bolt goes through and when you tighten it, it pinches the ball joint. But how this actually works is your ball joint has this notch in it, and as the bolt goes through it, it keeps the ball joint from pulling through and it locks it into place, as well as clamping the knuckle to the unit itself. Now, if the ball joint is too far up, you can see that the ball joint is coming up pretty far here. And if you go to put the bolt in, it's not gonna go. It's gonna only go in so far. And that's because our ball joint is high up and it's hitting down here where you can't put the bolt in. So how do you fix that? I'm gonna go ahead and use a screwdriver. And I'm going to go between my CV axle and the ball joint and just gently work that down. So our bolt came out from behind. I'm going to put this in the back side. And I'm going to go ahead and pry this. I'm going to use a pry bar here so I can get my hand out of the way. Now at this point here, we get the bolt going in. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this wheel. And I'm gonna get my socket and my extension and just tap that bolt through. Go ahead and install the nut. And let's go ahead and snug this down. Now my bolt is spinning on the other side, so I'm gonna use a 17mm wrench on the other side to hold that in place. Go ahead and torque this down to 87 foot-pounds. Remove your lug nuts. Now our particular bolt has a hole through it for a cotter pin. If yours does not have it, chances are you have a lock nut on there. But we're just going to install our cotter pin here. I just like to bend over one of the legs there and snip the other one off. Now, after you have your cotter pin installed, don't forget to go ahead and clean your brake rotor. Install your wheel, line it up onto those wheel studs. Let's go go ahead and get our lug nuts started. Now once we get all of these started, we're going to come back and snug them all down. Let's go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 75 foot-pounds. You want to do this in a crisscross pattern. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.